This afternoon, I think we're going to be a little bit more hands-on when it comes to treating PANS and PANDAS. And I have the pleasure to welcome Anders Fasth, the Whistler called by me today. Anders Fasth, MD, of course, professor in immunology at the Department of Pediatrics at the Institute of Clinical Science at the University of Gothenburg.
Yeah, it's a long affiliation, yes.
Yes. And I know you have some background, that's why you are...
So I will probably at some time hanging on the table as a delinquent.
But listen, if there would be any problem, I'm a little bit concerned. So you have at least this chair, if you want.
You will see. Anyhow, it's quite an experience to be here and to listen to all speakers. And I'm most grateful to Sane to inviting me, because this is such a learning experience for me, coming from a completely different field. Just as an introduction, I almost became a child psychiatrist. Christoph Ilberg and I started at the same time at child psychiatry in Gothenburg, but I stepped out. And I think we have got back to each other with the collaboration I now have with the Gilberg Center around PANDAS. So I will tell you about the experience, not only what in Gothenburg, but I will review the literature. First, the disclosures. They are not too many and not related to this topic. But as I said, I will review the few studies that are done and what we have done. And fortunately, there was also a very recent study that is not yet published, but was presented as a poster just a couple of weeks ago. So, why should we use intravenous immunoglobulin with this disorder? Yeah, the idea is, of course, that PANS is a disease of immune system gone wrong, that we heard several times, and I think it's more and more firmly established that it is that way. Immunoglobulins, yeah, they contain antibodies to bacteria, viruses, but they also have what we call immune modulatory properties if given in high dose. Immune modulation, that means in some way you could say bring back the immune system to the normal, or to direct it to a certain point for certain purposes, to differentiate it, as you can also use immune suppression to treat immunological disorders. Immune suppression, there by the name, you put a brake on the immune system in some way. Immune modulatory properties, if given in high dose, that was serpentipedus discovered quite a long time ago in Switzerland, when there was a boy with Viscotoli syndrome. They had thrombocytopenia, and when he got immunoglobulins, his thrombocytes, his platelets, also increased. And the dose used at that time was 2 grams per liter, and we still use it. That's still the golden standard, and very little have been tried to see if you can lower the dose and if it's differences in different situations, except in fact in thrombocytopenia, where many times it's enough with 0.4 or 0.8 gram per liter. So later, of course, immune modulation have been extended to many diseases of autoimmune origin, including neurological diseases. And we will hear more this afternoon about other ways to manipulate the immune system, for example, with rituximab. So how does immunoglobulins modulate the immune system? If you think of how it can do, you first have to realize the antibody that you see in the middle. Make it in your imagination to look like a lobster. You have two claws. They grip the foreign substance, whatever it is. But it also has a tail. And the tail for the lobster, that moves the body, of course. Here, that part that we call the FC part, the tail, that tells what reaction should be when the claws have taken the enemy, so to say. It can be different things, like activating complement, activating other parts of the immune system. And here I have just listed some examples of what can happen when we give immunoglobulins in high dosage. I don't go into details in this, but you can see you can blockade the receptor for the tail, for example, the FC. You can, the immunoglobulin can have antibodies to antibodies, and in that way block other antibodies, for example, cross-reacting antibodies. It can inhibit complement activation, they can inhibit or modulate cytokine response, activate death receptors that you have, so actually cells undergo what we call apoptosis, or you can say suicide, modulate other cells of the immune system, and they can signal through inhibitory FC receptors. They can increase the steroid sensitivity and expand lymphocyte repertoire. So many, many ways, and basically we don't know how immunoglobulin works. I would say one of the diseases where we most likely know how it is Kawasaki disease, a general vasculitis that can cause heart problems in small children. There is the cytokine release and the inflammation that is stopped within minutes you give it. We don't know what dose, I already alluded to that, and we can come back to that. And for immunological disorders, it's only a few where we have the proven effect in randomized controlled studies, like juvenile dermatomyositis, Guillain-Barré, and its chronic correspondence. The rest is mainly case studies, and a few we also have a new proven effect, like Alzheimer's disease, where it has been tried. So let's go through the few, or the only two, randomized studies. I think when we give critics to them, and we have to give heavy critics to them, we also have to realize that this was pioneer works, and how should you do the pioneer or the pilot studies? That was, of course, a lot of thinking about that. But let's see the Swedo first randomized study. It was 29 children, and then they randomized both to plasma exchanged or immunoglobulins or placebo at one single occasion. So they were blinded to immunoglobulin or placebo, but not to plasma exchange. And can you blind to immunoglobulin or placebo? I don't think so, because you as parents have children that have got immunoglobulin in high dose, knows that almost 90% get headache of the immunoglobulin in this dosage. So it was easy to understand who got what and who got something else. The children were evaluated at 1 month and at 12 months, and there was a lot of investigations. I would say the most important is here related to effect is to have the different scales related to OCD or general well-being and so on. So the results were here, significant changes in OCD score at 1 and 12 months for the plasma exchange and the IV groups, as you can see. Oops, I mean that. There it should be, but it doesn't look there. So you see it's the change between start and evaluation time points, but not for the control group. But you have to be reminded also that children with exacerbations were offered retreatment, and 3 of the 19 got retreatment. So it's not exactly a follow-up of the natural course when you give immunoglobulins once. The Yale randomized study, they also gave only 1 infusion and had a blinded phase of only 6 weeks. There were 35 children, so 18 got immunoglobulins and 17 placebo. But the non-responders all got a second infusion at 6 weeks, and they were all evaluated at 6, 12 weeks and a half a year. And also here a lot of scales used to find the effect. And what was the effect at 6 weeks? No significant difference found. I would say we can do no conclusion from this, as only 1 treatment dose was given, and all the others that did not respond got then immunoglobulin a second time. This was followed also by an editorial in the journal saying, now we know that immunoglobulins does not work. And this is a quite firm statement, because we still use immunoglobulins. Then there was a retrospective survey. Close to 700 patients they found with PANDAS, both children and adults. And over 600 have been given immunoglobulin at some time. Varying dose, schedule, plus other therapies are given at the same time. And they say they reported results for 265, but in fact it's 191. And 49% of the responders to the survey said that immunoglobulin was very effective. 59% had immunoglobulin because they had some kind of antibody deficiency, not defined. And it stated that immunoglobulin was more effective for the PAN symptoms in the antibody deficiency group. So to me, this data can only be used to tell that immunoglobulin is used to treat PANDAS, not to tell if it's an effective treatment. There is too many confounding factors in this study. Then we have the latest study, an open-label study of 21 patients, a kind of pilot study at 3 clinical sites in the US. And as I said, it was published very recently, and fortunately this was published at a conference where the abstract did not belong. It was in an immune deficiency conference, and I happened to be there and see it, and it's interesting. Here it was to evaluate Octa-GA, immunoglobulin produced by Octa Pharma. And the participant, as you see, there are children between 4 and 16 years old with a diagnosis of PANS. And it's a multi-site open-label study, 3 clinical sites. And the age of the participants is around, the median age is 11 years, and more males than females. And the mean follow-up time is about half a year. And you see the schedule down here, how it's given. It's a screening phase, then it's given every third week, 1 gram per kilo for 6 months. And evaluated with a number of scales. Here you have efficacy endpoints. So quite extensive follow-up, which I think is good and is also necessary if you do an open-label study and want to prove the effect. The interesting thing is with the results. You have them here. And I spoke to the company today, and also to them it was quite astonishing that the effect is so clear in this open-label study. All psychometric endpoints studied exhibited statistically significant decrease following 6 cycles of immunoglobulin. So they concluded that patients with PANDAS can benefit from the 6-cycle course of immunoglobulin. I think that's quite interesting results, even if we know that this is an open-label study. Then comes to our experience. We don't have that many patients, but the first 12 months, 23 patients we had diagnosed during the study time with PANDAS, and 8 patients were treated with immunoglobulins, 2 outside Gothenburg. They got immunoglobulin, IVIG 2 grams per kilo every 4th week for 6 months. And some patients repeated treatment owing to relapse after that 6 months. And here you have the results for the first 12 months. And if you see PANDAS scale and the overall assessment, it's very similar to the open label study. Quick response during the first 3 months for both the PANDAS scale and the overall well-being. Also, which I think is interesting, all 8 treated were not participating or only sporadic in school. Afterwards, all is in some kind of schooling, 5 partially and 3 fully in school. If you go into the details here, was the response sustained? Then it's interesting to see that 2 had full remission after just 1 infusion and did get only that single infusion. And the remission has been sustained for more than 1 year. 2 children were treated for 6 and 7 months respectively and have since had remissions for several months. And the other 4 were treated for much longer period as symptoms recurred at varying times. For 1 patient, the effect vanished after 1.5 years and treatment was stopped. For 1 patient, intervals could be periodically prolonged to several months and then eventually be stopped. But for 2 patients, relapse has recurred within 1 to 3 months after, and further treatment is pending. They obviously are dependent on the treatment. And just to give the examples what can happen, this is a PANDAS scale for 1 patient, and you see it varies after in relation to the immunoglobulin treatment. The other patient, the parent sent me the assessment of pain that was severe for this patient, and you see how it fluctuates with immunoglobulins, and when we stop the immunoglobulins, this is a recurrence and the patients that needs further treatment. So if we summarize our experience, few patients giving intravenous immunoglobulins, and I think that's correct. It should be so. It's 3rd line therapy after COX inhibitors and antibiotics and possibly steroids. Also, as you see, and we see in other case stories, obviously dramatic response, but is it because of immunoglobulin or the natural relapsing course of the disease? It's too few patients to draw a firm conclusion. But at least our results are in line with the extended case reports and the results from recent open study. I think that is the best we can say. And if we go to some general conclusions, from strict scientific point, the question of the benefit of immunoglobulins is still unsolved. The two randomized studies have several flaws and point at different directions, as you saw. The new open study, case reports, ours and others' experience point to that immunoglobulins can be efficacious for some, but not all. And obviously we need more studies. And I would also say that in the long run, if nothing changed, it would be optimal if we find new therapies, as there is a global shortage of immunoglobulin. And in Europe, we are largely dependent on US plasma for production of immunoglobulins. So if there is an increase in demand in the United States, there could quite suddenly be a quite substantial shortage of immunoglobulins here in Europe. Also, think that this is a very expensive treatment. If we give 2 grams per kilo for 6 months for a person weighing 50 kilo, that is about 35,000 euro. So it's one of the more expensive treatments. But of course, you as parents, and I as a doctor say, can we save our children with this? It's certainly worth, because how quickly will that patient reimburse the society that some, if he can or she can go to school, be in work and pay taxes and so on. So you have to have it, give it a global impression of what this means, not just see what the hospital has to pay for it. Okay, I was not expecting this. This was my personal view, so it's kind that you share it with me. But if I should end with the last slide here before acknowledgement, is the outstanding question. So how should we do the new studies needed? Who should we include? I mean, we have the PANDAS patients, but when in the disease course should we include them? There is much in favor telling that if we, with immunological diseases, you have a window of opportunity. That means that you should treat early and hard. I mean, in many diseases, for example, in rheumatology, there is the saying, treatment to target. That is that you should induce a kind of remission, normalization within a couple of months. And then you will see that you, in fact, can stop the treatment and use less of the more expensive treatment if you hit hard from the beginning. The oncologists use that early, and now they are backing up to see if they can individualize. But I think there we have to consider it. We have to consider the dosage. For us, here it's probably 1 gram or 2 grams. 2 grams have been used because of tradition and by tradition every 4th week. But we can consider and must consider that the half-life of the immunoglobulin that we give is 3 weeks. So it would be more natural to give it every third week. And maybe we can go down then and save some money. Should we give it over 1 or 2 days? You might think that this is an academic question, but say, for example, I take the example of Kawasaki disease, for example. The treatment is more efficient if you give all the 2 grams at once, not separated over 2 days. And that raises the question, what helps the patient? Is it the peak, the very high peak, or is it a steady state that you get over a certain zero level at the steady state for the patient? We don't know that. We know that it's different for different autoimmune disorders. With 3 weeks, we have told about duration, 1 dose, 6 months. I think, personally, we should go for the 6 months. Duration of follow-up. Can we, or must we use intravenous? Can we give subcutaneous? We certainly cannot give normal subcutaneous 2 grams per kilo subcutaneous. That would be to give subcutaneous almost every day. And that would be too much, right? But there is this way of facilitated subcutaneous. You give an enzyme that allows the spread of immunoglobulin, and you can give 600 milliliters subcutaneously at one occasion. That might be an option. You get the peak, but you don't get as high peak as you get with intravenous. We need to find out. Outcome measures. You saw in the open label study a lot of the outcome measures, and I would encourage you on the other side, so say, than on me, to use many of them if it will be an open label. And then we have the question, and the big question, or randomized or open study. Will you as parents accept a randomized study and have your child get placebo after what you have heard here and what you have discussed within Sane or coming from other countries? That is a very important question. We would certainly do it randomized in order to finally prove that it is beneficial. But can we do an open study? Maybe if we, like the pediatric oncologists, for example, collect hundreds of patients and follow up them very strictly with the same protocol. So I leave with those questions and just take the next one with acknowledgement. And the most sincere thanks goes to you, patients and family. You are my inspiration and my most important teachers. And you have taught me a lot that I use in everyday life, and you have to realize I have been around for 45 years as a pediatrician. And then my sincere thanks to my colleagues at the Gillberg Center team. So with that, I say thank you, and yes, see if I get some questions. Nowadays for randomized studies, that 2/3 gets the active substance and 1/3 got placebo. The usually is that half and half, but in pediatric studies you do that to make it more acceptable among the patients and their parents. That's probably what I do. But the second best certainly would be an open label, if that is not possible. But then it needs to be very large and very rigorous.
As being on the other side, I'm really wondering, since the population is too small sometimes to make big conclusions, how are you working nationally or internationally? Is this something that is actually happening?
No, but this is the opportunity to find the network and also to ask, I mean, the best, or you need that for the study, you need a sponsor for the immunoglobulin studies. And they usually have network or ask colleagues to find network. I also say that makes it very difficult to do studies in rare disorders, in the sense that if you do a randomized study with a common disorder, say in adults, if 10-15% of the population, target population, say yes, we will participate, there will be a lot of patients and enough. Here, with a rare disease, and in order to get proper numbers, probably 90% of the possible participant has to say, yes, we want to participate. And that is of difficulty, which means that there will be a number of centers all over Europe, US, and possibly other places. So it's a huge task, whatever good study you do, if it's randomized or a large open label, it will be a lot of effort and find a sponsor. That is it.
That's the big.
Yeah.
And one last question. It's about if you have, I don't know if you have the time, but your thought about immunology and puberty, because some patients I have understood with PANDAS get better getting older. They are getting better. On the other hand, others get worse. So how do you think that could affect the IVIG treatment?
It affects, basically I answered the question, because of the variability and the relapsing course of it. That means that you have to increase the number of participants in the study.
That's always the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is the trick, and make it possibly more difficult here.
And talking about these networks, have you found any? Are you? Is something happening in these networks?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, of course, I am talking to possible sponsors, but
you don't know. Okay. You are doing your best anyway. Thank you very much, Fasth. And we will be back on the